When I found the letter, I didn't even mean to. It was one of those quiet afternoons when you start cleaning drawers just to pass time. The house was silent except for the sound of rain outside and the clock ticking on the wall. I had lived in this house for more than 30 years. Every corner held a memory. The laughter of my children, my husband's deep voice calling my name, the smell of Sunday soup filling the air. It used to be a home full of noise. Now it's mostly silence. That afternoon, I was looking through the drawer in my old wooden cabinet. Inside were faded photographs, birthday cards, and tiny things I hadn't touched in years. Then, between an old scarf and a family photo, I saw an envelope. It had my name on it, written in my husband's handwriting. He had passed away 10 years ago. My hands shook when I picked it up. The paper was yellow around the edges, like it had been there for a long time. I sat down on the floor, next to the cabinet, and just stared at it. For a moment, I didn't want to open it. I was afraid of what I might find. But something in me whispered, "You need to know." When I finally opened that letter, everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about myself, began to shift. I met my husband David when I was 22. He was calm, gentle, and had this quiet smile that made me feel safe. We married a year later and moved into this very house. Our life was simple. He worked as a postman, and I stayed home with our children, Sarah and Michael. We didn't have much, but we had love. Or at least I believed we did. David was the kind of man who kept things to himself. He wasn't cold, just private. If he was hurt or worried, he never showed it. He'd just say, "Everything's fine, May," and change the subject. For years, I thought that was strength. Now I wonder if it was distance. Our children grew up and built their own lives. Sarah moved to another city after she married. Michael stayed nearby, but we saw him less and less once he got busy with work. When David passed away, suddenly from a heart attack, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. He was gone before I could even say goodbye. After the funeral, I went through his things, but I couldn't bring myself to throw anything away. I packed his letters, notebooks, and clothes neatly in drawers and left them there. For 10 years, I never opened them again. Until that rainy afternoon. When I opened the envelope, I saw his handwriting again. It said, "For May, in case I never get to tell you." My heart started to race. I unfolded the paper slowly. His words were careful, almost heavy. He wrote, "May, I've carried something for many years, something I should have told you long ago. I wanted to protect you, but maybe I was just protecting myself." I stopped reading for a moment. My breath felt shallow. He wrote about a woman named Lily. He said he met her before we were married, that they had been close. He never told me because she left town suddenly. Then came the part that made me drop the letter. Lily came back years later. She brought a little girl with her. She said the child might be mine. I remember whispering, "No, that can't be." My hands trembled. The room seemed smaller, heavier. He continued, "I asked for a test, but before we could do anything, she disappeared again. I never found her. I loved you, May. I built a life with you, but I've always lived with the question I never answered." I couldn't read anymore. I sat there, clutching that piece of paper, feeling like the walls were spinning. For hours I stayed on the floor. Memories came rushing back. Nights he came home late, moments he seemed far away. That one time he got a letter and burned it before I could see it. I thought he was just stressed from work. But maybe all those times, it was her. Later that evening, I called Sarah. I told her I found something, but not what it was. She said, "Mom, maybe don't overthink it. Dad loved you." Her voice was calm, but I could tell she didn't want to know more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words, "The child might be mine." Could it be true? Was there someone out there, another child, grown now, who shared his blood? Weeks passed before I told anyone else, but the thought wouldn't leave me. So I started looking. I went through old letters, address books, anything that could lead me to this woman named Lily. At last, I found a small envelope tucked inside one of David's notebooks, an old photo of a woman holding a baby. On the back, it said, "Lily and Anna, 1986. Anna. The name echoed in my head. I was pregnant with Sarah in 1986. Could they have existed side by side? My daughter and another? I couldn't rest. So I wrote a letter to the old address on the envelope. I didn't expect an answer. But 2 weeks later, I received one. It was short. "Mrs. Turner, I think you're looking for me. My name is Anna." When I read that, my hands went cold. We decided to meet at a small cafe in town. I remember waiting by the window, my heart pounding like I was 20 again. Then she walked in, a woman in her 30s, kind eyes, a quiet smile. She looked a little like David, the same way of tilting her head. We sat for a long time, just looking at each other. Then she said, "He was my father, wasn't he?" I didn't have words. I just nodded. She told me her mother had passed away years ago. Lily never married. Before she died, she gave Anna a photo of David and said, "He was a good man, but he had another life." Anna said she didn't want money or answers, just to know more about the man in the photo. We talked for hours. I told her what he was like, how he laughed softly when he read the newspaper, how he always fixed the squeaky kitchen door, how he loved gardening on Sunday mornings. She listened like someone collecting pieces of herself. At one point, she reached across the table and held my hand. Her hand was warm. She whispered, "Thank you for not hating me." And I realized I didn't. I couldn't. After that day, Anna and I stayed in touch. At first, it was letters, then phone calls. Then one Sunday, she came over to the house. I made tea. She brought flowers, daisies, my favorite. She walked around the living room, touching the old family photos gently. She stopped at one of David, holding our children when they were small. She said, "He looks happy." And I said, he truly was. That afternoon, Sarah came by unexpectedly. When she saw Anna, there was a long silence. I told her everything, about the letter, about Lily, about how I met Anna. Sarah didn't say much at first. Then she sat down and said, "I need time, Mom." And I said, "Take all the time you need." For a while, things were quiet again. But slowly, the silence turned into conversation. Sarah met Anna again, privately. They talked, laughed, even cried together. Months later, at a small family dinner, Anna sat beside us, not as a stranger, but as part of us. We didn't erase the past. We learned to live with it. It's been 2 years since I found that letter.
It still rests in the same drawer, but now it doesn't hurt to look at it. Sometimes I take it out and read it again, not with pain, but with understanding. David made mistakes. He was human. So was I. We all carry secrets, don't we? Not always to deceive, sometimes to protect. But truth, no matter how late it comes, has its own way of finding light. Now, when Anna visits, she calls me Aunt May. She brings her little boy and he runs around the garden just like my grandchildren once did. And when I watch them play, I feel peace, a kind I never thought I'd feel again. Sometimes life doesn't give us clear answers. Sometimes it gives us letters and forgotten drawers. But what matters is how we choose to read them, with anger or with grace. I chose grace, and that choice changed everything.